Hi, I'm Catherine Spearing. I'm the founder of Tears of Eden, and I just wanted to say thank you so much for showing up to support Tears of Eden. Whether you are watching this live or you're watching a recording later, we are so grateful that you're here. Tears of Eden is a community and resource for survivors of spiritual abuse. This organization is very personal for me because I'm a survivor of spiritual abuse from two different contexts. So I know firsthand the devastation that can be caused. Anyone who experiences any sort of abuse is automatically going to experience some isolation and likely confusion. But for a survivor of spiritual abuse, sometimes that isolation and confusion can be even worse. One, because God and the Bible were used to cause shame and harm, and that can just be so disrupting. And it can be very isolating because so many people don't recognize it as a real form of abuse. And a lot of times we're left navigating this by ourselves, which is where Tears of Eden comes in. We're hoping to provide a resource for understanding this experience through tearsofeden.org and the podcast. We're also working on developing ways to bring folks who've experienced this together so we can share our stories with people who understand. And you're going to hear a little bit more about that tonight. Also tonight, you're going to hear some stories from some other survivors that are just beautiful and wonderful. So we're very excited to share that with you. And you may even gain a greater understanding of that all elusive question: what exactly is spiritual abuse? So once again, we're so thankful that you're here. And in order to sustain this work, we are raising donations. We're a nonprofit, so donations are tax deductible. So there are three ways that you can give. You can go to tearsofeden.org/support, give online. You can give with Venmo at Tears of Eden. And you can also give by check by sending it in the mail. The address is in the details of this video. The address is also on the website, tearsofeden.org/support. While you're hanging out on the website, take a moment to check out the podcast, Uncertain, which is the #1 way that we raise awareness about spiritual abuse. It's also the #1 way that people find Tears of Eden. So take a moment to check that out while you're there. Once again, thanks so much for being here, and I can't wait to hang out with you.
Hi, my name is Caitlin, and I'm a survivor of spiritual abuse. Throughout my life, God and the Bible were used against me to control my behavior, isolate me, and fill me with shame and self-hatred. I felt like I was the only one who had experienced this, and I didn't know how to talk about my experience with others. After a few years, I started to share my story online, and I realized that I wasn't the only one who has experienced this kind of abuse. That's when I heard about Tears of Eden and the work they do to support survivors. I started to listen to the podcast from Tears of Eden called Uncertain, and I love hearing the interviews and being able to learn more. It gives language to my experience and helps me feel less alone.
I didn't have a term for it for a long time. I just knew that something wasn't right and it was having a very negative impact on my relationship with God, but I didn't have the words to go with it for a long time. It was soul crushing to do it alone because any sort of abuse, you really run the risk that people don't believe you. It seems like most abuse, unless it is overt physical abuse, most abuse is just not believed. But there were a handful of people who are like, oh no, I've experienced that too. I'm disillusioned with this as well. So I started a Facebook group of a handful of friends, and one of them happened to know who you are. And he added you to that group. And that was the first time I'd ever encountered a nonprofit that focused strictly on healing from spiritual abuse?
Well, my own experience of spiritual abuse started long before I had a term for it. I always just thought of it as people are sinners and you get sinners together, and good things, wonderful things can happen, but bad things happen too. But over time, I began to see something more than simply bad behavior. Began to see a certain kind of pattern, particularly among church leadership, sometimes among very charismatic and dominant personalities, and began to wonder what's going on here. And I started looking for help, and came across Tears of Eden through a mutual friend. And it has been really, as much as I've tried to encourage Tears of Eden and talk to people about it and connect people to it, I've also been helped by it profoundly.
I didn't realize how significantly my experience of spiritual abuse was shaping my life. I tried to deny it and move on for so long, but it didn't work. Finding Tears of Eden helped me reclaim my voice and my agency and start healing. They've helped so many others do the same. I really hope that other survivors of spiritual abuse will connect with the Tears of Eden community so that they can do the same.
I would say that before I encountered Tears of Eden, I didn't have a very large vocabulary for what spiritual abuse was. I am in the abuse advocacy and trauma recovery field, but spiritual abuse was not something that I had delved into very much before. Kind of stumbling upon your work really gave me a vocabulary for it and helped me to understand it better. And in the midst of learning about it with the interest of helping my own clients and people in my life that I know, I kind of discovered that some of the things felt really true to me in my story, and it kind of woke me up to the themes of abuse that were happening in my own life at the time.
Hello, I'm Marie Griffith, and I want to share with you the story of how I went from Googling, "Is my church a cult?" to becoming the newest board member with Tears of Eden. In 2017, my family and I left a church that we had been part of for 8 years. In the beginning, it was a beautiful community. We built very close friendships. We became covenant members of the church. We served faithfully. We helped plant a campus. We taught small groups. Our children were part of the youth group and served in a lot of ways. We were highly involved in this church and invested our time, treasure, and talent into the church. In 2016, though, we started to become aware of some disturbing practices and teachings within the church and within the leadership and staff. And I won't say all the details of that because ultimately I ended up writing my story in a series on my blog called Why I Left Giant Church Incorporated. And if any of y'all have listened to the recent Mars Hill podcast, or even the podcast that Catherine interviews people or survivors, it's the same. I mean, the same tactics that all abusers use were used with us in our story. But when we first left that church, we had no language for what happened to us. We had never heard of spiritual abuse. And so that's what led me to search, is my church cult? Ultimately, through my research, I found Diane Langberg, which was instrumental in my healing journey. Her resources are wonderful. I also found Dan Allender, and I found Grace. Because I found Grace, that's how I found Uncertain, the affiliate podcast of Tears of Eden. On this particular day, on this episode that I was listening to, Catherine interviewed Mike Sloan. Because of that, I reached out to Catherine, which started email communication with one another. And that's really the beginning of the story, our relationship, the safety I felt with her in talking about my story. Her website, I could see that she was creating this support resource, and not only that, a community of people to help people in their healing journeys, no matter where they are on the journey. So I believe in wholeheartedly in what Tears of Eden is doing. And even before I was a board member, I was helping in certain ways because I love the work that Catherine's doing. I love that she not only interviews survivors, but she interviews experts and authors and artists, because all of these things are important in our healing journey, to hear from different voices in different places on different journeys. So hopefully we are, and prayerfully, and our work is really towards this, is to build that safe space for people to heal, to help name what happened to them, because there's something powerful about having someone say to you, that happened to me too. There's a healing that comes with that. And so that's what Tears of Eden and the people that are involved in Tears of Eden are trying to do. We're trying to create safe spaces for people to come and listen, heal, talk about, and have community. And I'm just glad to be part of it. I'm glad for this opportunity, and we really believe in this, and we would love for you to join us.
Hi, I'm Gina Roth, and I am one of the board members for Tears of Eden. Since the very beginning, Catherine and I have been talking about how to do spiritual abuse recovery in a way that is trauma-informed. I am a personal survivor of spiritual abuse, but I've also been involved as a professional counselor, working with groups and individuals with people coming through spiritual abuse. And one of the things that I thought I could add to the team was to help provide some programming and design some different things that would help create a trauma-informed approach within this organization. So that's really what I've been focusing on this past year. We've done some focus groups and a pilot group as well, trying to get people connected into community following their experiences. And why is a trauma-informed approach important? Apart from being a very popular buzzword right now, trauma-informed really is, it captures our heart for wanting programming that's not going to further harm somebody. These people who are coming out of spiritual abuse are vulnerable, and so we want to do everything we can to create safety for them and to not further harm them in any way, shape, or form. So really that's the basis behind a trauma-informed approach. It also just harnesses the brain's power to heal and recover, and research shows that that is a better approach overall anyway. We would love to invite you to be a part of this organization and part of this trauma-informed approach to spiritual abuse recovery. So if you would like to partner with us in some way, shape, or form, there are lots of opportunities to do that. We're looking to sustain this work right now through donations so that people who come to us are not burdened with a financial obligation as well. We'd love to be able to separate those things out and make it so there's no charge for any of our services or our resources. Another thing that we are able to offer is, because we are a nonprofit, all donations are tax deductible. And you can give in 3 specific ways. You can give through Tears of Eden, through the website at tearsofeden.org/support, or you can give through Venmo using our @tearsofeden handle, or you can give by check, and you can find the details of address and who to make that out to online through our website. Again, that's tearsofeden.org/support. Thank you so much for considering giving and supporting this incredible organization. We look forward to your partnership. Thank you.
Well, my own experience of spiritual abuse started long before I had a term for it. I always just thought of it as people are sinners, and you get sinners together, and good things, wonderful things can happen, but bad things happen too. But over time, I began to see something more than simply bad behavior. Began to see a certain kind of pattern, particularly among church leadership, sometimes among very charismatic and dominant personalities, and began to wonder, what's going on here? Why is this my experience? My own experience of it comes in fits and starts, but really began when I began working for very large churches and coming across personalities that wanted to be in charge. And I love institution. I love the church. I love working with people. But anybody who knows me well, has worked with me, knows that I have an independent streak. And my own experience of spiritual abuse comes in trying to respectfully disagree and discovering that was not allowed. And then as that was happening, uncovering more kinds of behavior that was either domineering, abusive, sometimes getting into deceit and gaslighting, and saw it damage a lot of people and begin to damage me and create some pretty toxic environments for me and my family. So that was when I began to look more closely at it, and came across. I was working with one leader who I could not figure out what our communication problem was. And after a while, I began to realize that I was just being lied to on a regular basis. It wasn't, and even then, even when I had the hard evidence, I could not even wrap my head around the fact that this was intentional in some way. And it wasn't until I read Chuck DeGroat's book, When Narcissism Comes to Church, that I began to realize there's a pathology here. And I started looking for help, and came across Tears of Eden through a mutual friend. And it has been really, as much as I've tried to encourage Tears of Eden and talk to people about it and connect people to it, I've also been helped by it profoundly, getting handles, understanding what it is that's going on, and understanding that while I am a sinner, not everything's my fault.
I would say that before I encountered Tears of Eden, I didn't have a very large vocabulary for what spiritual abuse was. I am in the abuse advocacy and trauma recovery field, but spiritual abuse was not something that I had delved into very much before. And kind of stumbling upon your work really gave me a vocabulary for it and helped me to understand it better. And in the midst of learning about it with the interest of helping my own clients and people in my life that I know, I kind of discovered that some of the things felt really true to me in my story. And it kind of woke me up to the themes of abuse that were happening in my own life at the time. So, which was really eye-opening. So how I've been navigating this experience currently is I was privileged to be part of the first pilot support group through Tears of Eden. And that support group has really helped hold me up and carry me through discovering my own story and kind of working through my own pain. That when I found those words and that vocabulary and started seeing how this was playing out in my own life, in my own community, and, in helping the people that I help, it was just really amazing to have a small group of people that could come alongside me, that I could talk about my experiences with safely, that would give me that attunement and validation, and just help me kind of sort through those feelings and really just sit with me in it. That's so powerful to have people that can just share and support you when you're going through a hard time. It kind of helps clear some of that fog, and it can feel so disorienting. But when you know you have this like foundation of a safe community, it really grounds you and gives you a feeling of safety, even in the midst of things that can be really, really tough and really confusing. So it's been just so amazing and so helpful to know that that is there when I'm struggling. And that I think that's been the biggest support, just knowing that they're safe people to talk to and to come to when I'm struggling to understand or to process through all the ways that spiritual abuse has affected me. I think another survivor would find Tears of Eden helpful for the same reasons that I have. For education, learning about spiritual abuse, learning what it is, discovering the ways that they have been harmed or seen others harm really gives a sense of empowerment to survivors. And then the resources that Tears of Eden provides as far as community support. I mean, even reading the posts that are on social media and finding other people in the comments to find community with is so, so huge for healing, because even though we've been hurt in community, to find community with other survivors can really, really help people in their healing journey. So those are probably the biggest ones that impacted me, and that's what I would say would be helpful for other survivors as well.
Hi, my name is Tina Shim, and I'm a board member here with Tears of Eden. As you've heard and seen today at our virtual gala, there's a lot of hurting people out there. And the absolute tragedy is that they have been hurt in places and by people who are supposed to be safe. They've been hurt by people who have the power and the responsibility to help souls thrive. And yet instead they've left behind victims who are feeling insecure, unworthy, lonely, and wondering where they stand with God. This is why Tears of Eden exists. We are committed to coming alongside victims, survivors of spiritual abuse, to equip them, to provide resources, and to help them heal individually so that they can also help the community at large. And to do this, we need your help. Donations to Tears of Eden work in two ways. First, they help us to equip people by providing resources, by distributing resources that will help them heal individually. And then secondly, it also allows us to advertise and to make sure that the people who need to hear about these resources can hear about them. It helps us to fund search results. It helps us to fund social media awareness. And it helps us to make sure that no matter where people are on their journey, that they can find us and that they can find resources and know that they're not alone. Our hope is that no one will have to walk that same path of loneliness and confusion that so many of us have had to. Financial donations can be made at tearsofeden.org/support or on Venmo at Tears of Eden. Thank you so much for attending tonight. We really appreciate just your time, your support, your prayers, and your financial donations.
As we wrap up this evening, I wanted to take a moment to say thank you so much for showing up tonight. We really enjoyed getting to interact with you. Thank you to everyone who gave financially during the time leading up to the gala, those of you who gave donations during the gala. And I also wanted to share with you that we have some special Tears of Eden swag that we are going to be giving to everyone who gave a donation. That includes the people who gave leading up to the gala, those who gave during the gala, and also for anyone who gives donations for the next 48 hours after the gala. Every person is going to be getting some of our swag as a way to say thank you for participating in this story, for participating in the recovery of survivors of spiritual abuse. We appreciate it so much. We're so grateful for you. Make sure that you're signed up for the Tears of Eden mailing list by going to tearsofeden.org so that we can continue to interact with you over this material and this story of recovery for survivors of spiritual abuse. Again, thank you so much.